A quick note before we get into the episode. Oversharing is a podcast for entertainment purposes only. It is not a medical podcast and does not constitute medical or psychological advice. Always seek the advice of your physician or mental health professional.
Hello and welcome back to Oversharing. I'm Jordana Abraham.
And I am Dr. Naomi Bernstein.
We're back. I am back from my trip. My night nurse is gone. And as they say, the honeymoon's over.
Yeah, I thought you were going to show up today with like hair disheveled in a bathrobe, like with a baby under each arm. Like that's what I was expecting.
Well, that was me 15 minutes ago, but you know, I am a professional. Things have gotten worse since the last time we spoke. I told you they were sleeping well. And one of them is waking up. Charlie's waking up at...
I was going to say, you will not name names, but you did.
You know, I think she'll forgive me if she ever listens to this. She's started waking up at 4 the past 2 nights. Mike had taken the night before, so I got my first 4 a.m. situation last night, and here I am.
You actually look incredible, like rosy cheeked and bright eyed. For those of you that are not watching on YouTube, check it out. You look awesome.
Thank you. That is encouraging for me. I think it's due to a little tan that I've got on my trip to Florida. And yes, combined with some Botox that I also got a couple weeks ago.
The magic combo.
Yes. But no, I did not sleep last night. And yeah, reality has set in. So, I mean, here's the thing. Again, very lucky to have had this nurse for as long as I did. I feel like incredibly grateful that I was able to afford this, that I was able to get this help. It was extremely helpful, especially like with the situation of having 1, being super pregnant, then having 2, recovering from a C-section. And it really made the whole experience extremely enjoyable, and I loved it. And I'm still enjoying the experience, but now it feels more real. Now I feel like a real mom. And reality is hit. And I realize, again, most people get that second they take the kid home from the hospital. I'm having a second wave.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So how can I help you? What would you like to talk through?
I don't know. I guess logically, I know that this won't last forever, and that, it was like the first week, and you know, I do have childcare. I just don't have like a nighttime childcare. So I'm able to do the show. So it's like logically but when you're in that moment and you're so tired and you can't sleep, it does feel like that feeling that I've seen online of like, is this going to be forever? It feels like it's going to be forever, or just like, it's just very hard to function on little sleep. It's just, I think that's just like a fact.
Yeah. Yeah. So what actually, if you want to walk us through, so you slept from like what time to what time? And then she woke up at 4 a.m.
I slept from 11 to 2, and then I heard some rustling. So I went in and put a pacifier in someone's mouth, and I went back to bed. And then 4 a.m. I went in, and she was like staring at me.
She was
for
the day.
Up. Yes. Seemingly up for the day. And then I kind of felt like, I wasn't sure what to do. Or like maybe she's hungry. So I fed her a bottle, and then I like breastfed her a little bit. I don't know, all these like things that I've done over it's now been a week that it was really just Mike and I. We went to Florida, which was great. And they were sleeping in Florida. And then we got home from Florida, I had been a little lax with the schedule, with the two of them, where I was kind of like,
about the system.
Yes, we did. I called you and I was like, well, the first night after the baby nurse left, I was like, I like started crying, like, and I'm not really a crier. And I just kind of felt like a little overwhelmed. It was like our first full day alone. And I just felt like, oh my God, like this is it. I kind of felt like my type B-ness, which I've never really cared that much about, being type B, being very like, I'm just going to go with the flow. I'm just going to like, I'm not like a super scheduled, super highly, neurotic, organized person. And I've never had an issue with that. But then, I had this baby nurse, and even when she packed us for this trip, she put us, she like labeled all the clothes, and she's like very intent about like the feeding times and the feeding amounts and like the way they're dressed and like the way that everything is done, the way they're given a bath. And she taught me all of this stuff, which like I was doing in front of her. And then it's like the two of us on our own. And I think like I just had these feelings of like inadequacy. Like I'm taking away this person that was like so meticulous and so, so loving and so nurturing and so like on top of everything. And now I felt like bad that these kids were like left with me, who's like a little bit of who's like feels like a little bit of a mess. And I was like, and I mean, I don't, they're not speaking, they don't even know who's who or what's what probably. But I did feel like this sense of like, I'm never going to be as good as she is. And I mean, on the one hand, this is like, this is her job. This is her profession. Like she is like, like she's been doing this for like 20 years. It just felt very much not my skill set, that I didn't really like was faced with that realization of like, this is harder for me than some other things where like, I'm in a creative field. Like this is like a creative thing that we do. It's like a little easier to be like, not super regimented. It might be beneficial to not be super regimented, but now with these essentially twins, if they're off the schedule, like we all suffer.
Yes. That is really hard because in that moment, it's hard. They're crying. Things aren't going well. Something's not right. And then it's a hard moment. And in that, I think we talk about this a lot in that moment. Now we talked I think it was last week about like the comparison, right? And I think we're going to talk a little bit about that. Like when you have a point of comparison, it makes it even harder. You have this very discrete point of comparison, this other person that was so not just organized, but also really loving and warm and caring. So you have this difficult moment where things aren't going right. And then you do the thing where you're like, well, what does this mean about me? This means that I'm not good enough. I'm not as good as this other person. That is really, really hard in that moment. I mean, I know that you're doing a great job and the type B-ness of you is going to benefit them in other moments. In that moment, not so much. I remember having a new mom moment in a different way. We went and took our kids to a newborn baby photo shoot. This was, I think, with Lila, when I was a first brand new mom. And I think you do these photo shoots when they're like 10 days old or something. They're really young. So it was a brand new mom.
I remember that came out cute. I remember.
So cute. Yeah. So we bring her to this woman's house and she's like screaming. And I'm the same way as you. I don't have all the right bag packed and I don't have the whole. And we bring her, she's screaming on the way there. And I pull up to this woman's house and she's like screaming as I'm bringing her in. And this gorgeous woman, and I'm like, disgusting and fat and my whole vagina's ripped open and like I feel my breasts are leaking all over my shirt. Like it's just, I feel like a disgusting cow. And this gorgeous woman opens the door with this tank top with her like beautiful, perky, non-leaking breasts. And she's like, oh my gosh, the baby. And she's so loving. And she just takes the baby and she instantly stops crying. The second this gorgeous woman holds my newborn baby and like the whole time, it's like a 3-hour photo. She's like the baby whisperer and she's just like taking my baby and she doesn't make a peep and she's putting her in these positions and, her little tank top and her little shorts. And I'm like, I love her and I hate her. And like, she's like the best thing and the worst thing. So like, I'm just like that moment of like having this very discrete point of comparison of this woman who's like the best with my child. So I love her, but I'm also comparing myself. So I hate her. Like it's such a hard feeling in that moment. So I feel for you, but I know that the parts of you that right now feel like they're not working for you, I think in other moments are going to be a real strong suit. But yeah, with sleep training and things like that, I think there's a lot of benefit to structure and system. I wasn't like that. And my, takes a lot longer and it's a lot harder to get there. It's almost like the same thing with like dog treat, like the people with a really well-behaved dog they're hard ass and they're structured and they can tolerate all the, you have all the systems in place and you crate train and you don't let the dog sleep in the bed and, you do the long leash inside the house and all the things that you do it all the right ways.
I had that thought too about the dog. And I was kind of like, yeah, there's just like people who, don't let the dog do whatever he wants and, don't pick up the baby. If the baby doesn't want to finish the bottle, they don't make her finish the bottle. And that's how I got where.
Yeah. But you're really, I'm sure you're doing great and you're following your instincts. And in some ways there'll be moments that you had a hard moment because you weren't doing the type A following the system thing. And there will also be amazing moments because of that as well down the line. I think on the flip side, there are these moments like I'm further along. So the type A, super tight parents, maybe they don't let their kids try something, like to climb up a little, rock wall at the playground or something. And then they get to see they're so excited when they do it, when it's something that they're challenged and they get that moment of being able to do it because they're able to do that risk-taking thing that some moms wouldn't let them do. Maybe you'd be more likely to let them do it. And then they get that sense of there's, the push and pull.
I'll keep that in mind. Maybe I'll try to move, as we say, there's a spectrum and you can move a little bit on the spectrum. So maybe I'll move a little bit more towards a type A-ness. If I think sleep is a big motivator. Yeah, I would say for getting your shit together. Like, that affects them, but also affects me very deeply. So
yeah, and getting some help. I think Mike's a little bit more in that way. Maybe he can take the lead on some of that.
He was like, we really need to stick to like the schedule. And I was like, well, I tried to give her the bottle that time and she wasn't interested. So I gave it to her an hour later. And, like he's right. And he did the night before where she woke up at that time too. And like, it's just funny because he does come from a much more structured background. So we'll see how that plays out in how this is coming up. But, it's hard. It's definitely hard.
It is really hard. Not sleeping is really, really hard. Like I have patients where they'll be in this mode of life with a newborn, not sleeping, like in therapy, talking about how they feel depressed and anxious and all the things. And then they'll be like, I sleep trained my baby and like, I am better now. Thank you for your service. Like I like my life. Like once you're sleeping, we talk about diet and exercise and meditation and all these things, but like sleep is extremely important to just feeling like a human. So I feel for you.
But I mean, I do remind myself that I prayed for this. Like this is my dream has come true and I want this. And I'm very there's so many amazing moments.
Yes.
In all of that.
Yeah. Smell that little baby head smell. That is a gift. I wish if we could just bottle in that moment. That is just like, that can get you through it. And another thing that I will say, everyone out there, even if you don't have kids, if you have a dog, an animal, a cat, a partner, a best friend whom you're very, very close with, syncing your breath up with another living thing is very calming. So even if you can't sleep, if you're finding yourself anxious of like, how am I going to function tomorrow? And you're racing through like, oh my gosh, I have this meeting and I have this recording and I have this call and I'm going to be overtired. Just if you can just sync your breath up with the baby's breath and smell her head. And, or even if, like I said, if you're not a parent and you're anxious about not sleeping, like some people just don't sleep just because they just can't sleep for no reason. There's something very calming about syncing your breath up being in sync with another living being, even an animal or a partner or a good friend who's next to you. So that's a really, really calming sleep strategy if you want to give that a shot.
I will try that later today.
And that smell, soak that up.
There's so many great moments, but it's just, it's easier to see them when you've had a full night's rest, which is nice because Mike and I trade off. So every other day I'm going to feel extremely grateful and relaxed.
Well, that's a system. You got a little system there. All right, let's get into it.
Let's get into it. If you guys have a voicemail, you can leave us a voicemail at 646-363-6294. If you have an email, you can email us at oversharing@betches.com. Also, you can subscribe to this podcast. If you're a subscriber, you get 2 bonus episodes a month and you get all the episodes ad-free and a day early, so you'll get them on Mondays instead of Tuesdays. Or you can join one of Dr. Naomi's groups and talk about this kind of stuff with other people who are like-minded.
Yes, for sure. I really love even the new mom stuff, right? Because I have groups where we have new moms and then we have people that are single and not wanting to be single and looking for a partner, or we have people that are divorced. We have the whole spectrum in the same room together. So we kind of have this dynamic of someone who's like maybe going through infertility and then someone who's kind of like in this exhausted new mom stage. And it really is this beautiful coming together of all sort of walks of life. And it helps you find that perspective. So the groups are great. Come find us if you're interested in joining a group. It's a really beautiful community. Or if you're interested in individual therapy, if you're feeling kind of stuck in that way, I do have some spots open for individual therapy. So if that's something you're looking for, NaomiBernstein.com. There are some state restrictions. So just reach out. I will let you know if I'm available in your state. NaomiBernstein.com.
All right, let's get into our episode. I will read our overshare. Hi, Dr. Naomi and Jordana. I've been a listener for a long time now and have something I'd love your take on because I genuinely don't know how to shake it. A couple of years ago, my mom's health took a serious turn and she's been in and out of the hospital ever since, going on almost 2 years now. Around the same time, my dad finished radiation treatment for prostate cancer, and I was also really struggling at work. Basically, everything hit at once. A few months into all of that, I went on a hike I'd done many times before. It was about 87 degrees with no shade, but I was well hydrated. But I ended up having what I now believe was an anxiety attack. I became convinced I was going to have a heat stroke. It took a few weeks to feel completely normal again. Here's the thing. I used to love being outside, hiking, heat, all of it. And now I feel genuine anxiety about being in the heat, even in situations that aren't risky. I know logically that I was probably fine that day and that my body was just carrying a lot, but knowing that hasn't made the fear go away. I'd love to hear your thoughts on why our bodies can lock in a fear response like this, even when we know the original trigger was situational, and what I can actually do to reclaim something I used to love. Is this something therapy can help with? Exposure? Just time? Thank you so much for everything you both do. This show has genuinely helped me feel less alone during a really hard stretch. A hot girl who is not okay with the heat right now.
This stinks because this was something that brought her a lot of joy in a time that's really hard, and it doesn't anymore. So that's really crappy. And I will also validate that is really hard. Both of her parents at the same time were having big health scares. So that's a really big deal. And then work stuff on top of it. So like all of her safety net stuff, financial, and then both of her parents all at the same time were coming out from underneath her. So yeah, sounds like you had a panic attack and it happened to be in your happy place, which sucks. As far as the association stuff, our bodies are basically like just supercomputers. Your body learned in that moment. It just created this association between being hot and then having this intense physiological reaction. And that's kind of what a panic attack is. It's a feeling like you're going to die. That's, basically what most people feel when they have a panic attack is this feels like I'm going to die. And if you're in a car when it happens, then you develop a fear of driving. If you're in an elevator, then you develop a fear of elevators. If you're on a plane, you develop a fear of planes. That's what why people develop phobias a lot of times is because they have a panic attack in association with a certain specific place. And then the fear becomes of that place.
I didn't know that. Even if it has nothing to do with, I mean, I guess she's saying it sort of did have to do with that. That's, I guess, like what I'm not sure about is she saying that like it was sort of due to the heat and all this mental stuff, or was it just due to the mental stuff?
Fear of flying is a big thing that people have, right? Because there's like a little bit of a stimulus, which is like, I'm getting on this smallish space with a lot of people, and it feels like maybe it would be hard to leave if I wanted to, right? Not like impossible to leave. I mean, I guess once you're up, impossible to leave. But I think people start to feel anxious, like once they even start walking on the plane. So you get like a little bit anxious, and then that kind of builds. And now you start to get really anxious, and then it turns, and that can be precipitated by, I don't know, something like what she's describing, some external thing that has nothing to do with the plane. But then it all comes out because there's this little stimulus of being on the plane. And now you associate that I feel like I'm going to die feeling with being on the plane. So now every time you get on a plane, your body creates that association. So now it becomes attached to the plane, even though it probably started as something having not that much to do with the plane or the elevator or the whatever the thing is. But now the same way we associate anything, like, you know, if I throw something at your face, you're going to flinch, right? Mm-hmm. Because at some point when you were a little kid, you got something thrown at your face and it went in your eyeball. It didn't feel good. So now you flinch. Yeah. Or even like evolutionarily, we've learned that, you know, you close your eyes when something comes close to your face. So our bodies really make these computations and make quick associations so that we can make fast judgments so that it's survival. The faster we can react to things and make these associations, we can, you know, make fast decisions and protect ourselves. So with the heat, I think she probably was a little bit hot. She probably was a little out of breath. She probably was a little bit uncomfortable. And then it became like a breeding ground. Maybe her heart rate started to, you know, she was hot, her heart rate went up, and then all the rest of this anxiety was ripe to kind of come up in that moment.
And you're more like prone to this in like a situation that's a little uncomfortable, like if in a situation that's already kind of uncomfortable, you're saying like you could be more prone to this from external factors.
Yes, 100%. And then when that happens, now a lot of times what might happen is kind of what's happening to her, which is now she's going to avoid the heat because she's like created this association, or you avoid the airplane, or you avoid whatever the thing is. And so you've avoided it. So now you build it up in your mind. So the next time you go there, you're already a little anxious. And now it's also hot because that's the thing you're avoiding. So it's inherently hot. So now you're kind of like revving yourself up a little bit more. So it's probably a little bit more likely to happen again. So now you're increasing the chances. And that's how, you know, panic disorder builds on itself. So I'm glad that she at least is recognizing that it's coming from someplace else. A lot of people are like, I'm just afraid of planes, or I'm just afraid of heat. I just don't like the heat, or I don't like hiking. She's aware that it's coming from something else, which is a great first step. Yeah, I think you can work through this, and I would do like an exposure therapy around it, especially because you did once love it. So I think if you're not in therapy around all this huge stuff that's going on, I would really do a lot of the exposure and talking and processing in a nice, cool, air-conditioned room with a therapist first, and then start to bring in, you know, just exposing yourself to, you know, maybe like, I don't know if it sounds like the heat is more of the thing, but like just sitting outside your house, like in a lawn chair near a pool or whatever, and see how you can handle that, and doing some meditation outside in the heat, and then work your way up to like a hot hike that you
Hot
used
yoga.
to enjoy. Yeah.
Bikram yoga. That's hot.
Yeah. Yeah. That would be like the ultimate test. That's like the 10 out of 10 exposures is like Bikram yoga.
Right. Don't start with that.
Yes. Oh my God. Yeah. I once just like walked in off the street to like a Bikram yoga class and was like 30 seconds away from puking all over the floor.
Yeah. That's a tough one, especially because like you feel like you can't leave because you're in the middle of a class.
So I think this is doable. And but I do think there's a lot going on, and it makes sense that, you're hiking and you're thinking and there's a lot there, but I think you can get back to it. I just think you have to take the little steps and process all this stuff in a safe, nice, cool place, and then go back and kind of start desensitizing yourself to the heat in a different way, and then work. Because when you're hiking, the thing about the panic disorder is your heart rate is going up, right? When you're hiking, your heart rate is going up. If that's happening and you're now like kind of already panicked, that's going to be a tough spot. So, and the heat. So I think that you have to sort of work your way up, letting your heart rate kind of go, or exposing yourself to the heat when your heart rate's not going up with hiking also, like slowly inch your way up, back up to the hiking. But I would, I think you need to process all this stuff. This is a lot. It's both parents and your livelihood. Like, I think that's a lot to process. So I would address some of that.
Agreed. Yeah.
This is very normal though. I'm glad we're talking about it, because I think this does happen to people, where so many people, they'll be like, I think I'm having a heart attack, or like, they'll go to the emergency room and think they're like having a heart attack and it's a panic attack, but then they link it to a situational thing, which makes sense. That's what your body does. That's what we do all the time.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's really interesting, because I never even thought that like the fear of planes was not about the fear of planes.
The first time, oftentimes it's not, but then it gets like attached to that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I see what you're saying. Like I'm saying like the
original.
Like, the original.
Yeah. It's everything. Everything we like and don't like is kind of like an association that we make to something that's like not really about the thing.
Right. From early on, even like who you're attracted to.
Yes.
Or not attracted to.
100%. You had I don't know, you had like a soccer coach when you were 5 that was like really nice to you, that was like a blonde or whatever. And then you're like, I kind of like blondes. Why do you like blondes? I don't know. I had this soccer coach that was like really nice to me. Or like I had a soccer coach that was really mean to me, and he was like, whatever, skinny. So now I don't like skinny guys, or whatever the thing is,
That's funny.
We don't even think everything we like and don't. Why do you like one thing and I like, why do you like blue and I like yellow? Why do you like mountains and I like beaches? Like there's somehow something happened that
an early association. Yeah.
Yeah. We had a picture book when we were a kid that like somebody read to us that we had a positive association and it had a mountain in it. Like these things just.
Way to up the stakes of this early childhood child raising.
Yeah. I mean, we have associations all the time, these like subconscious little associations, and it's okay. Everyone likes, and even politics, even our politics they come from, somehow something made you feel safe or unsafe, or someone we liked said something and we were, made
so
us,
interesting.
Yeah.
I'm going to now think about everything I like and don't like and where it came from. That's going to be my thing this week. But I think that's helpful, and kind of just like working her way up and sort of just having that acknowledgement of where that all comes from.
And you can work your way back, just even like taking a hot shower. Can you take some nice deep breaths and make the shower a little bit warmer than you would have, and see if you can relax into that, and then kind of work your way back up to, I think you'll get there.
All right, let's do a Betch assist.
Hello, Jay and Dr. B. Jay, congrats on the babies. And my baby was born in between yours via emergency C-section. Oof, I hope everything went okay. So I feel very pulled to your stories and current journey. My ethical dilemma. I joined a mommy and me class with other first-time moms with babies around the same age. We have a group chat that has saved us all as we navigate this journey together. Some moms have posted their crib/sleep situations and they aren't safe sleep at all. One of them made my jaw drop with how many toys, loose blankets, etc. were in the bassinet with the baby. Other moms shared their babies sleeping in swings and loungers for overnight sleep. Now, our pediatrician talks about safe sleep every single visit, and I have lots of friends with babies, so I was aware about having a fitted sheet, no toys, etc., as a safe sleep environment in the crib/bassinet. For these moms that shared, is it okay to say something? Do I just let it slide? Because I'm a first-time mom too, so I don't want to come across as a know-it-all. I just get anxious thinking, what if something happens to one of those babies and I could have said something to the mom? These are all new friends, so I don't want to come across as annoying, but I'm so anxious and conflicted on being silent too. Curious what you two would do.
I like this one a lot because I could totally see both sides of the story. I mean, we talked about this last week or a couple weeks ago about the mom with the speech pathologist saying that she couldn't stroll the baby away from her because it'll limit like their speech or something unsolicited, or just as a general PSA. I kind of get like both sides of this. On the one hand, it's like, fuck off. This isn't like no one asked you, right? On the other hand, I could see having the urge to be like, maybe this person doesn't know and I could be helpful. And as someone, who has like a following, I'll get occasional DMs of people who are giving me their 2 cents on how what I'm posting is a wrong form of parenting.
Oh, for example, I'm just curious. Sure. What are a couple that you've got?
I'll give you 2. One was in my babies are winter babies. And I had a picture of one of them in like in their stroller, in their Duna car seat, stroller/car seat. And they were wearing like like a winter, like a fleece. And I got a response being like, they shouldn't be wearing the fleece in the car seat or whatever, blah, blah, blah. It wasn't like a puffer jacket, like a heavy winter. It was like it was like a sweatshirt fleece.
Okay. So you're supposed to buckle them in with like not too much and then put a little blanket on top of them.
Something like that. Like it's because it could like suffocate them if they get into an accident. And by the way, I asked the pediatrician after seeing this and she said it was fine because it wasn't that heavy. And then, you know what I mean? Then I'm like, all right. She was basically like, yeah, it was like 35. It was like, this was literally on the way to go see her. And it's like 30 degrees out. So she's like, yeah, that's fine. It's not, as long as you're not wearing like puffy extreme layers, whatever. She said it was fine. So then I'm like even more angry at this person. Who's
right.
Like adding
you're
in
like,
there.
Unless you're 1,000% sure that you're right. Also, that's another thing. Okay.
Right. Because it does serve to, 1, give you anxiety, and 2, make you feel inadequate. I think those are the 2 feelings that you usually get when you're already doing something that someone gives you the pointer about. And then the other thing was like in that same car seat, I just took them to Florida. Someone else commented that, and I got 2. So I have 2 of those Duna car seats. One of them I bought, and the other one is my friend's, whose kid has outgrown theirs. And
ooh, used car seat. How dare you? Now, is that what it was?
It was and it wasn't. It was, so I got this car seat from my friend, and because her kid was like, had grown out of it, it didn't have like the infant insert, which I think you're actually supposed to remove after they're like 11 pounds, which both of my girls are above that. But someone responded to like the picture of like one of the girls in the car seat being like, you should really keep the headrest in the car seat until they're like, I kept my headrest in my car seat until like 9 months because you need it for head support and blah, 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 like whatever. And also like, I don't have the headrest. The car, it was not given to me with the thing. And it's kind of like, should I not use this car seat because it doesn't have that? Also, like, it doesn't, in the guidebook, it doesn't say you need it after the baby's a certain weight. So it's like you know what I mean? It's a bunch of these like little things where I see that and I'm kind of like, someone messages it to me and I'm like, if I can do something, I guess like if I get asked, I asked the pediatrician for the other one. This one, I'm kind of like, there's nothing I can really do. I kind of need to use this car seat. I'm on the trip. I'm not going to buy a new car seat on the trip. And so it's just kind of like irritating. Also, the baby seems fine in it. Her head seems supported. She's like of a normal weight, whatever. So it's like all those things where you're like, if I disregard this thing, am I a bad parent, even if it doesn't really like necessarily make sense for my situation, or like it's not the perfect way to be?
So the other side of this is, yeah, if you saw a kid sleeping in a crib, like on their
holding
stomach,
a bottle of vodka, holding on their stomach, with
on their
toys
stomach
everywhere,
with like a big blanket, like half over their face or something. You could make it about you and say something like, oh, my pediatrician said that, like, I always try to keep them on their back. They made it. That one I think is a big one, right? Like back to sleep is like the big thing that they're always saying. There's these big ones like infant car seat insert, I don't think is like the biggest like push. They're not shoving that down your throat when you leave the hospital. Because like, I think there are some that if you're really concerned, if there's like a blanket that looks like it's half over the kid's face, maybe you might want to say something in that case where it looks really bad. But there are so many different ways throughout the course of a child's life. Like if you take, maybe suffocation is one of the leading causes of death in, infants under 1, right? So if that's something that you're really anxious about and you want to say something, but then now you have your friends and they all have toddlers, right? So if someone says, oh, look at this new house that I'm going to buy, there's a pool in the backyard, are you going to be like, well, the leading cause of death in toddlers is drowning. Like, you sure you want to buy that house? There's a pool in the backyard. Like, where do you draw the line in like telling your friends about safety with their children? Like, you might be like, I would never buy a house with a pool if I have a toddler because that's a safety risk. It is, right? Like,
well, everything is, that's what I'm saying. Like everything is sort of like a risk reward ratio in your head.
Yes.
Like, or like, equation, I think, in everyone's. I'm sure you have that for your kids too, even at their age. Like, like your son plays football. Like, what's the risk reward of that? Like, everything has an inherent risk
Someone
in
might
it.
be
But
like,
also,
you're going to let your son play tackle football. Here's an article about how horrible that is to let your son play tackle football. We could do this
all day.
Yeah. You could go to your friends at the bar and be like, are you having a 5th drink? Do you know how poisonous that is for your liver? You have children. Do you know? Like, you could just be continuously judging other people's health choices for themaselves, for their children. If their child is sleeping in a swing, if their child is sleeping in a mama-roo, like, you could be doing this all day, telling people what's safe and unsafe for themselves. If you go out with a friend and they go outside and have a cigarette, like, you could just be doing this all over the place. I think you have to pick and choose. I think if you saw a blanket over a baby's face, even I would say if you saw, they make a big thing about the back to sleep. If you saw someone posting a picture of a newborn baby sleeping on the belly, maybe you want to make something about that. There's like these big ones that they're making a big deal about. Or if you saw a baby like sleeping in between 2 parents in the bed, like the big ones that you really know are super unsafe. But something like, I don't want to say, because there are certain things that we all know are not good. They're supposed to sleep in a crib on their back with a fitted sheet. That's what we know they're supposed to do. So I'm going to put that out there, with no toys, with no blankets, with no squishy bumpers. So that's what you're supposed to do. But I think all along the way, parents are going to make the choices that work for them given their circumstances. And some parents, yes, they are going to make the choice that they can't take it anymore and they're going to let their baby sleep in a swing, or they're going to get a house with a pool, even though, is it safer to get a house without a pool? Yes, probably is.
I mean, I guess, and also the other thing is like she's saying these moms are sharing the babies who are like sleeping in these positions. Like it's possible they're being watched, like, or they're taking a picture of them in this cute little setup. Like, it's not like this is how I put my kid to, because if they're taking a picture, if they're sharing a picture of their baby,
they're awake.
They're probably like hanging out with the baby. And I think it's like a much lower risk to be like hanging out in with your baby in their bassinet while they play with a toy than it is to, leave them there for the night.
Right. Or maybe it is, like you said, they're setting it up like an aesthetic, cute photo with like a blanket. Cause it's like, when people set up their nursery, there's like a little blanket like hanging over the edge of the crib because it's just like a cute aesthetic look. Does it mean that blanket is going to be there when the baby's sleeping? Probably not. But it's just, so I think the best idea, unless it's a really good friend, is to assume that it's like just a cute little aesthetic setup for the picture. Unless it seems really obvious that the baby's like all tucked up in like a loose fitting, blanket, and that it really seems bad. And if that's the case and you're willing to risk it, you can say, hey, my pediatrician said, that I shouldn't really have blankets or anything in the crib while they're sleeping. I wonder if yours said the same thing.
Right.
Might be a way to approach
I would
it.
definitely not write it in the group text. I would message them privately. That's another part. I wouldn't say that to the general group because that does feel super shamey. I would say exactly what she said to us. I know and if she sent that text, I know I'm a first time mom too. So I don't want to pretend like I know anything. It gives me like, my pediatrician's constantly telling me about the safe sleep stuff. And it's just kind of like making me a little anxious to see these pictures. I'm sure you already know this, but it's really bothering me. And I hate to sound like a know-it-all.
Yeah.
Like all that stuff. I think if you there's like vulnerability in what you're saying.
Yes.
It's less offensive.
Yes.
As opposed to like, you're doing it wrong. This is what you should do. Also, like, I don't think you need to say, this is what you should do. I think you could say, this is what I've heard.
Yeah, I totally agree. But I do think like all along the way, there's going to be these moments where I see it all the time. Parents that are doing things where I'm like, whoa, like I'm at the stage where you're like kids sitting in the front seat versus sitting in a booster. Like some parents are letting their kids now start sitting in the front seat whose kids are big enough to, and sometimes, or we have in our neighborhood, which I'm like, whoa, this is crazy. Kids that people ride in golf carts and they have their kids like sitting in the back seat of a golf cart. And I'm like, are they strapped in? Like, this doesn't look safe. Like or dogs in golf carts, like just hanging out. And so like, I see stuff all the time where I kind of want to be like, that doesn't look safe, and like wag my finger. And to me, like having a kid in the back of a golf cart, like on a street with other cars, and they don't look strapped in, like that to me looks way more unsafe than like a lovey in a crib, in my personal opinion. So this is going to
But you never
happening.
Say anything.
I never say anything because I'm like, they know their kid's in the back of the golf cart without a seatbelt on, like.
Right. That's their risk reward assessment.
Yeah.
Whatever they're doing.
They're aware. But I don't think it's the word, like you said. I think the way that you said it, where you're very like self-aware of how it might come off. And you're like, I'm a first time mom too. Maybe I have no idea what I'm talking about, but I know it makes me super anxious. And so exactly how you said it, I think is a great way to say it. I think if you phrase it in that way, that doesn't sound like there's a way to say it that's annoying, and there's a way to say it that's humble and self-aware and kind and concerned. Great question.
Okay. Very good question. And don't DM me.
There's so many things. I remember someone made a comment. I took Lila to the beach when she was little, and she was like, she's too young and she shouldn't be wearing sunscreen. And like, you know, I was
Right.
like,
You're like, fuck off.
Yeah.
Right. Or it's
like, wow, she's fine.
well, that's the thing. It's like most of the time they are fine. And like, again, everything is a risk. Moving on. This is really the type B parent episode.
Yes.
Yeah.